So I'm gonna be honest, sports card comps is one of the craziest things, and I want to talk about why I think comps are absolutely insane to me. I actually made a short video. I made a long video about this, but I cut it up into a short. My shorts do better than my longer videos, so it's actually the longer video. This did pretty well because I was talking about like tips for dealing with dealers. And one of the clips I put out there was talking about the phrase "I need room," and really that's just because I get annoyed when dealers say that because it's like I get it. We all need room, bro. It's not a reason I should come down. It's not a reason I should come down. Now, if you have comps and you're like, hey, I'm willing to do this much, you've given your price. And I can either choose to sell you at that price or not. Or me as the dealer, I've set a price and I'm like, this is where I'll be. And then you as the buyer can decide to buy it. That's how commerce works. That's how buying and selling works, okay? That's from the bartering system up until like financial money, which we do a lot of bartering in sports cars. I'll trade you this. I wish other industries were still like that. I'll give you 200 pairs of shoes if you build my house. So I want to talk about why I think comps are absolutely insane to me on most cards. Now, this does not apply to stuff with a high sell-through rate. So like if you go to Wemby, Victor Wembanyama, Prism, Base, PSA 10 rookie cards, you're going to get a pretty tight range of what they're selling for. I think they're like $75 to $85. All right. So it's really easy to figure out comps with those. So I'm not talking about high sell-through rate comps. What I'm referring to are things that don't have as, like they're not selling 10 to 20 a day on eBay. If you look at cars, so like I deal a lot with like 90s inserts, okay? 90s inserts, 90s numbered cards. I'll go in and I'll toss a card up that there's very few available, and I'll put it at a buy it now. And what I do is I will very often, yes, I look at the previous sales. And you might see a lot of the EX credential set that I'm working on. They're numbered out of 499. It doesn't mean there's 499 of them left, but that's how many were printed originally. A lot have been lost in the sands of time, if you will. They've been thrown out when mom was like, oh, I got to make some room for my gym, and she threw them in the trash. So a lot of them are gone forever. So they're not all in existence. And so you don't see them very often. I've said it before, like I overpaid for several of those cards. A Gary Payton, SGC7, I overpaid by like 100 plus bucks on it. But the reason is because it was the only one available and I wanted that card. I will look at previous sales, but then what I do is I look at what is available now. So I'll go on to eBay and I'll look at what is listed as a buy it now. If my card isn't listed at all, you get to pick what you put it at. Doesn't mean it's going to sell for that much, but you can choose like, oh, the last comps were 45, 65, and 80. I'm going to go in at 120 because there's none available. You got to think for a customer, if they want that card and they can't go buy it right now for that amount, then it's the best deal they can get. Therefore, it is the best price available to them. Now, does that mean they have to buy it? No. It doesn't mean they could feel like, oh, it's too high for the last few comps. Maybe it is. But here's the thing that's crazy to me. When we look at comps, I'm talking buy it now, which means it was a set price that somebody just went in and purchased, or bids. They're both kind of crazy because if you step back and look at buy it nows and bids, there's a whole lot of scenario to take place in there. And I'll give you an example. I bought a $30 mystery box at my LCS, Cardinal Bryant. They're great. And I bought it and I'm going through all the cards, and it's mostly just like some modern base cards and then some like 90s just base stuff. So nothing crazy. But then I pulled out a Reggie Miller card. It was like an upper deck and it didn't look like anything special. I hadn't seen it before, but I looked on it and it was numbered out of 50. And I was like, oh, that's cool. It's like a numbered out of 50 card. So I went and looked, no comps, none. I'm talking card ladder didn't have any, nobody had comps in the past several years of this card. And you're like, okay, well, it's because there's only 50 were made. How many were ever, actually made it to the light of day? Can't find it anywhere. And so I was like, okay, well, what I usually do is I go on and I look for other players in that set. And I found a David Robinson that sold on bids for like 80 something dollars. I was like, oh, that's cool. I got a card. And David Robinson, Reggie Miller, I think sells, for what I've noticed, sells a little higher than David Robinson on a lot of those like inserts, just because he has like a cult following, especially in Indiana. And so it's like, you get your Reggie Millers, your Penny Hardaways, your Dennis Rodmans. It's like, those are like not the Michael Jordans or the Kobes, but they still do pretty well. And so I'm like, man, I don't even know what to set this thing at. And so I was like, I could throw it on bids, but then with a rare card, you got to think, how often are people looking for it? And really, think about this. When you're doing something on bids, if you want to sell that for a decent amount, you need, if one person knows the value and they're, ooh, I'm going to go ahead and bid on it, they might get a steal on it if no one else recognizes it. So if you're putting on bids, you need at least two people who value that card to see it and start fighting over it, or else you're going to sell it for almost nothing. So you're taking the risk, a 7-day risk or however long risk of, I need at least two people to see the value of this and then make sure they carve out enough time to go in and bid on it. They don't get busy or they're on vacation or they don't have their phone dies. You need both of them to be aware of that value and start going after it. Now, the other risk you take is when you put it on buy it now, because there are people, I have saved searches of cards that never pop up. I love Ron Gant. He's one of my favorite baseball players, Brett Butler, Fred McGriff, and I've got their legacy stuff, their platinum medallion stuff. I've got all those saved, and it almost never pops up on my saved searches because they don't pop up very often. And when they do, I'm always hoping that somebody's throwing a buy it now at a low price, or somebody's throwing it on bids and no one else wants these rando, hot for a minute players from the 90s that I like. And so when I put it on buy it now, you're just like, you're guessing at what you think it's worth unless you're willing to sit on it till someone takes a step forward and has the value on it. So with that Reggie Miller card, I looked at the David Robinson and I was like, man, I couldn't find any comps from any other cards in that set except for like one like random, like I want to say like Stoudemire or something, and it sold like super cheap, like 20 or 30 bucks or less. And I was like, man, that Robinson was like 8 months ago. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take that Reggie Miller and I'll list it, I think, put like $110, $120. So I was like, I'll go high for what I think, and I'll just, hopefully it sells. And I listed it that night, went to bed, woke up the next morning, I had like 3 people who had messaged me on eBay asking like, what would you do here? What'd you do here? And then, but I went to look at it and the card had already sold. Somebody just came in, paid straight up, buy it now, boom, took it. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, so, because is anybody else like you put a buy it now up and it sells immediately, like, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. I did that with an Emmitt Smith. It was numbered out of 35. I had it like SGC 8. I graded it myself 8 or 8.5. And I had no idea about the card. Couldn't find any comps. I just stuck it at like, I don't know, $100, something like that. I don't remember. I made that number up. It was like between 50 and 150. Tossed it up, sold immediately. So it's like people have been waiting on that. And you're like, in the back of your head, you're like, I just sold that thing for thousands less than it would have been worth if I'd have put it on bids. But then again, you run the risk of somebody else not seeing it. Anyways, so that Reggie Miller, tossed it up. 2 or 3 people hit me with the messages asking, what could you do? They're trying to get a good deal on it, but it had already sold. Somebody else was like, I'm not playing that game, and bam, bought it straight up. And so, and then I went in the messages like, hey man, I'm sorry, it already sold. He's like, no, it's, and the guy said, no, it's my fault. I should have just straight bought it. I knew I should have. And here's the thing you got to keep in mind, and this is, again, not with the Victor Wembanyama base prisms. This is with that numbered stuff or that rare stuff that they're not listed anywhere. You got to keep in mind, if it's not available anywhere else, whatever you put it at is the best price someone can buy it. That is an advantage. And so whenever I'm listing stuff, I don't know if this is supposed to be about comps, but it's in the process of saying all this, I'm showing you how crazy comps are, that now that card, that $120 sale of that Reggie Miller, the next guy that finds one of those out of 50 MVPs, that's his comp. I could have sold that on bids. I know I could have sold that on bids for much more than it went for, because there are either people that collect rare Reggie Millers or they're collecting that whole set, and those guys are competing against each other. But someone coming into the hobby and they know how comps work, I know how to look at sold items on eBay, they're going to go and see that and be like, oh, it's worth 120. But they're not going to know. Like, I can't put an attachment on Card Ladder when somebody searches and go, hey, bro, put it on bids. It's going to do better. Like, I can't give somebody that advice. And so it's like we base these comps off of these things, especially for rare cards. We base it off of this stuff that is so in the moment. It's so circumstantial, because if the buy now was low and it was paid straight up for that and it didn't sit very long, it didn't sit for overnight, that's too low for that. But then also, maybe only one person was willing to pay that amount. I just bought, like a few days ago, a Ron Gant. I collect Ron Gant. He's from the 90s, played for the Braves, the Cardinals, and a few other teams after that. But I like him because I grew up in Atlanta in the mid-90s, and he was a player I picked to be my favorite players, or randomly picked him. So I collect all his stuff. I have 2 or 3 of his credentials cards. I do not have his essential credentials. It's the one with like the silver stars on it. It's numbered out, I think, 99. And the other ones are out of like $2.99. It's different with baseball and basketball. Basketball's $4.99. But the essential credentials, I can't buy one anywhere. It's never popped up, nothing. And then, what do you know? my saved search for Ron Gant pops up. Somebody's got it for sale for $200 or $250. And I was just like, boom, bought it straight up. Didn't give him best offer, nothing. You know why? Because I could go in and say 150 and we can haggle and I could get it for 200. I think I got it for 200. I can look right now. Sorry, I feel bad that I don't like to lie to you guys, and it's, you know, somebody's going to like fact check me. You said you wouldn't fact check me. Sorry, I keep using that as a joke. I bought it for 221. I bought it for 200 and it cost me $20 for tax. So I could have haggled and tried to, I'll come in at 100. Hopefully we land at 150. But that time in between might have given somebody who's working on the essential credential set or thought they could flip that, go in, bam, buy it. These comps, in my opinion, and again, I'm not talking about the base stuff, the stuff that there are thousands of. I'm talking about the rare stuff, the number stuff from the 90s, those collections. I recommend, because comps are crazy, I recommend, especially unless it's a big name player. If that's a big name, essential credentials, like even like Deion Sanders, trying to think of Braves, Deion Sanders or Ken Griffey Jr. I'm throwing Ken Griffey Jr. on bids all day because people are searching those constantly. But stuff like that, I would almost say you'd be better off throwing it at a high buy it now with offers. You accept offers. And then I always try to find the limit of offers, like what's not going to hurt my feelings or make me upset. And I put that as my minimum and then see what you get and let it sit for a while. And if you don't ever get offers, you got it too high. But if somebody starts coming in with offers, you can start seeing the range of what people are willing to pay. And that's where I've seen success with those cards. And honestly, and again, it's different for me because like I just do cards for fun. It's like a side thing. I do it for fun. It's not my main job, but just whatever. And I get cards occasionally. I mostly buy PC. And so I'll let my stuff sit for months. I don't care. I had a PSA 10 of Allen. Oh my gosh, here's a great example of that. You ready? I was at the Dallas Card Show. It was about a year and a half ago. And there's some guys set up at the front, and they do the thing where they have the money sitting in their showcase and no cards. And that means they're buying. And so I walked up and I showed them all my cards. And I'm selling them like a Jordan Poole PSA 10 for a couple $100. And I had like 30 in it. And I sold them a couple other cards. They ended up getting like $500, a Walter Payton rookie and something else, like $600. And there was a card in there that I'd gotten graded myself. And I didn't know because I collect Allen Iverson. I just wanted graded. It was like the horizontal Iverson. I think it's called Spotlight or something like that. And it goes raw for like, I don't know, 10 to $40 is a consistent raw. And I'd got it in a lot. I graded it myself and I graded a PSA 10. All right. And when I was doing that, and I was like doing my grade reveal, I think it's on the internet somewhere. I was doing my grade reveal and I was like, oh, cool, PSA 10. I just put it in my collection. And then one day I just started looking it up. Like I was like, I wonder what that's worth. The only comp was from like 2 years before that. And it was like $700. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, that's crazy. And I looked at the reason. And the reason was at the time that one sold, there was a Pop 9. And there was only one for sale. And it was for sale for like $700 something. They had put it at their previous comp and it was just sitting there. So I knew I was like, it's not worth that. And so actually I think it might not have been one up. I think I was the only one up. That's correct. It was not for sale. One sold by nows for like $700 something. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to toss it up. You know, if I don't sell it, cool. I want to keep him. But, you know, if I can make a few $100s, I'll do it. So I put it up for like $600 something on buy it nows. And then I took it to that show and those guys were looking at him and he was looking at that card and he goes, oh, we'll give you $25 for this one. I was like, $25 for the PSA 10? I was like, what? He's kind of shrugged. He goes, those are the comps. I go, okay, I'm good. I'll keep it. Because I knew like that's not right. He was looking at the PSA 9 of that. And so I sat there on it, buy it now. About 5 months later, it sold for like $600. It's exactly my buy it now. Because some guys either working on Allen Iverson PSA 10s or that complete set PSA 10. You can get a lot of people with the set registry on those things. So that's the thing I always try to keep in mind when I'm looking at comps. If there's not a lot of sales, your comps kind of don't matter. The more important comp than the last sale is the comp of what can I get it for right now. That is the best comp I've found. So unless you need the money or unless you just feel like it's a deal, it feels like a deal and you're not going to regret it, don't feel like you have to sell it for those if you see that you can wait it out because of the rarity and the lack of other available. Now, if there's like 5 buy it nows of that card for a lower price, you need to lower your price if you want to sell it because nobody's going to buy it for that if they can go buy it on the internet. And that's the craziest. I get like pricing your cards at whatever, but if I can go on the internet and buy it cheaper than you have it for sale right now in person, I won't do that deal. Why would I? I could just go buy it easier on eBay. So I don't know. This is more of just like a rant about how we base these, and we use these comps as like night or day, black or white. It's not. It's not black or white, especially with the rare stuff. So what I always tell people at the end of the day, take your card, imagine yourself either buying it for that amount and you have it in your hand, or imagine you selling it and not having the card and having the money in your hand. How do you feel? Do you feel relief? Do you feel regret? It's like I literally put in my mind, whenever it's a tough decision or something like that, I take a second, I picture myself holding the card or holding the money and not having the card. I picture that exchange happening in my mind. How do I feel? If I feel good, I feel okay with it, I make it happen. I either make the purchase or make the sale. That's how I do it on those cards or whenever I price those. So take comps with a grain of salt, but also work with people who are open and honest when talking about comps. That's the biggest thing too. Like when working with dealers, like I don't mind if I think I start out kind of hot, like, oh, I gotta have room. You know, when you start talking to a dealer or somebody trying to sell you at your table, if you're set up as a dealer, you know pretty quick if they're just in it for them or if they're in it for a fair deal, one way or the other. And those are the people I personally like to do business with. I've come out on the better end of those. I've come out on the worst end of those. It happens. But as long as I feel good about a deal, that's kind of where I go. Like I'll be honest, I'll give you a quick example. Man, this has been a longer episode than I thought. But this is the place where we give our thoughts. Thank you so much. Like and subscribe. I was at Culture Collision. Great show, by the way. I was at Culture Collision, and I was walking around, and I saw a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar rookie card. I think it was a 1 or 1.5. It was a rookie card. And I bought it for like, I don't remember the exact number. Maybe, let's say a couple $100. I bought it for like $220, $250, something like that. I bought the card, and it's like as soon as we made the deal, like I felt instant regret. And it wasn't because of the card. I loved the card, but it was like the guy's interaction. And I didn't like it. Like I didn't like the way he acted. As soon as I gave him the money, he started acting really weird about stuff. Like it just was, I got terrible vibes from the dude right after we did the deal. And so like literally I sat there that night and I was looking at the card and I loved the card, but also I had this weird feeling to where I was like, I don't want to hold a card because I don't want that story of that exchange to be what I think of when I see that card. And so I literally set it at my table, sold it. I think I sold it for like $20 more than I bought it for, which is fine. That's cool. Sold it the next day at that show, and I was okay with it going. And then now I have I think I got a PSA 3 of it somewhere. It's right there. Yeah, PSA 3 of that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar rookie. Lou Alcindor, sorry, sir. So I don't know. Good vibes, good deals, good people, and that's who you want to do stuff with. And comps, again, and I have a sign that I put on my table when I set up, and it says comps are crazy and subjective. Let's talk about it. And I want to have a conversation, and I want somebody to walk away feeling like they're happy with what they got and I'm happy with what I sold it for. And I don't want people to feel pressure. If I ever do a trade, I'll do this too. And this is a great practice. If you're an adult, I highly recommend this, saying this. If you do a trade or a deal with a kid at a show, we've all made deals where we walked away and we regret it. We have instant regret, or we find a comp, or whatever. You make a deal without looking up comps and you look them up later and you're like, oh my gosh. Or you make a trade. Unless I forget, I always say this to kids when they make big purchases or if we do trades at my table. And I say, if you change your mind, come see me and I'll trade you back as long as I still have the card. And I feel like saying that to these young people, one, we want to encourage them to collect and feel comfortable in this hobby and not take advantage of these kids to make money or whatever, a dollar. I think that the more we can let them feel at ease and not put them under the stress that we as adults feel whenever we make big purchases or big trades, I like to tell them, hey, if you change your mind, come see me. We'll trade back as long as I still have it or if I still have that money. Like, I got you. And I did that at Culture Collision. Some kid came up. He wanted to trade something for a RJ Barrett Red Select PSA 10. I'd bought it for $200. And then apparently after that, there was a comp. And I traded him for a card. It was like 150, I think. We made the trade, and he came back like 30 minutes later. He's like, hey, man, there was like a comp for like $40 on that card. We trade back? I was like, absolutely, man. I wasn't upset. I wasn't mad. Like, I didn't know that comp was there. I was okay with it. And I was like, sure, of course. And so we traded back, and he got his cards back. Like, let these kids feel comfortable. Don't let them feel guilty or crummy about a trade or a sale if they come back and they regret it. Even if you're in the right, like even if you're like, no, there's a comp higher or whatever, if the kid regrets it, let them trade back. That's my opinion. You don't have to. You do whatever you want. You're your own person. But that's something that I really wish that a lot of adults would do, especially for kids at these shows. Don't feel like I got you, got the sale. You didn't look it up right. That's your fault. Like, don't do that. Let these kids make these mistakes and learn from them in a way that they don't hate it so much they never come back to a show. So I don't know why. I don't even know what I'm going to name this episode. This episode called Comps. Tyler can't stay focused. All right. Y'all be good. Stay sweet. I love your thoughts on anything I said, or summarize what I said and make it better. That'd be great. Go to the comments, and if you're on YouTube, go to the comments and find whoever has the most liked comment. That person says something better than me, because you're all better than me. Thank you so much. Y'all be good. Stay sweet and never stop collecting. Sports cards are dope. And so are you. Later.